All right, Bulls and Bears, we're back. We're back with some more very strange, unusual, and just weird news to bring you today. You're not going to believe what's happening with the banks. Actually, if you've been on this channel for a little while, you might believe what's happening with the banks, and we're going to get into that here in a few minutes. But we've got more strange occurrences now with ships, and we had, of course, what happened in Maryland a couple weeks ago now with the ship losing power. Some say it was hacked, others say it was a glitch. Um, another ship lost power here just recently, and this is per Captain John Conrad, CEO of G Captain, a New York tugboat captain, informed that the 354-meter container ship lost power while transiting New York Harbor, unquote. I think last fall we talked about that movie Leave the World Behind and how many people were saying that that's prophetic or that that's signs of things to come with ships losing power. And if you saw that movie, you saw the ship run up onto the shore. It was a situation where the power was out. There was mass global situation happening, basically an emergency situation with lots of outages, glitches happening. I'm not a movie expert, but I think that kind of sums up the plot. So very strange that we're seeing these things continue to occur. Now, I said this year was going to be very strange, and I think what we're going to see later this year is going to really make these things that we're talking about today pale in comparison. Right? We're going to talk about the markets here too in just a bit. But let's get into what's happening with the banks, right? So we've got the strange situation where these boats are losing power. Folks, what's going to happen when the entire banking system goes dark? How many days do we have until the shelves are cleaned out? And I'm not fear mongering here. I'm just going off of what many people have estimated. Many experts with supply chains have said if we see a breakdown in the supply shipments and if we see some sort of outage with the grid, that would happen in just a few days. You would see the shelves empty at just about all of the retailers, right? So that's just timing based on how fast the stocks get reshelved, how fast the shelves rather get restocked after things get cleaned out from the shelf, right? So it doesn't take that long, and that's just the estimates based on the shipping time frames and all that, right? Not just my opinion, but what people have estimated. 2 to 3 days is kind of the estimate, right? That I've seen most information come out about. Let's talk about this though. Bring this up here. You would think in this risk environment right now, with the levels of debt, with delinquencies rising, that banks would be more cautious about lending. Well, no, it's just the opposite. Consumer credit moved higher in February. Just wait till the March number comes out. I think it's going to be even higher. In other words, instead of banks tightening and becoming more cautious, they are loosening their lending. They're increasing the credit ceilings, even at all-time high debt levels. Consumer debt right now about 30% higher than what it was during the financial crisis. But yet banks are still increasing the credit lines, right? So this is the key to keep an economy from dropping, to keep an economy from going into a downturn, right? It's lending, so people can keep on spending. You have lending leading to spending, and I think anyone can see what's going on here. Something else too: auto loan rejection rates plummet, right? So even with loans delinquencies going higher very rapidly, auto loans are now the rejection rates should be increasing, right? You see the levels of debt right now, all the people, 15% of people with $1,000 plus a month car loans. Banks should be more cautious right now. It should be very difficult to get a loan. That's what happened in 2008, 2009, 2010. It became very difficult to get a loan, and that contributed to the economic downturn. What are we seeing now? We're just the opposite. We're seeing credit expand. We're seeing rejection rates plummet, the opposite of what happened in 2008, folks. You've got to see what's happening here. Folks, this is so simple. If you can't see what's going on here, open up your eyes. It's right in front of you. There's so many people out there scratching their heads, wondering why prices aren't collapsing, why these bubbles aren't bursting, why the cost of living is not coming down, why we're not seeing the economic correction or economic downturn that so many people have predicted. That's because this is inflationary, folks. When you have lending that continually loosens, so people can continue to borrow more money, even with record levels of debt, allowing people to go further and further and further into debt until that stops, until a limit is reached where people can't go further in debt and borrow more money. You will not see an economic downturn, and you'll continue to see the cost of living remain elevated, remain inflated. Inflation, right? The word inflation inflates like a bubble inflated, a housing bubble, cost of living bubble. But if it never deflates, is it actually a bubble? That's the thing that we need to try to wrap our heads around here in this channel. And I've always said here that just because something's overpriced doesn't mean that it can't continue or stay overpriced for a long time. And there's a possibility of going all the way into hyperinflation if they keep throwing money at the problem, right? Throwing money at the problem is not going to fix anything. All the rescue programs, the corporate um, welfare programs, corporate bailouts, all these things, right, do not solve the problem. What they do is they kick the can down the road. They make the cost of living remain elevated. They make things harder for the average working person. But there's a few people, I say a few, a lot of people, the top 10%, the top 20%, that really benefit from this entire situation, right? So we've got to understand what's going on in order to benefit from this. I talked about in my last video that I'm still in the stock market. Some people were asking about this. Let me just bring this up here. And I've got, I think about 24 stocks here invested in right now, about 8 minor stocks, but some of the bigger companies that most of you will know, Walmart, Starbucks, ExxonMobil, oil and gas, um, Spotify. Right, so that's just to name a few. Dividend paying stocks is what I really like. I've sold off a lot of my stocks, so I've got to admit I've downsized my positions because I see a lot of risk on the horizon. But if nothing ever happens to bring these markets down, then I'll still be making some gains. I have some dry powder on the side, so if we do see something big, like maybe the big event that people have been waiting for, the Black Swan event, the right, the name your name your events turning situation or a market turning situation that brings the markets down. There's so many possibilities out there. Um, you know, take your pick and let me know down below what you think it's going to be. Either way, it's the same. Have some dry powder. When the markets come down, you're going to be ready to buy. But if you do like me, you're still invested. That way, if this thing keeps going up into the stratosphere, you're going to be making gains along the way. Either way, it's a win-win. That's the way I do it, right? That's not for everybody. I know some of you have a different strategy. Some of you are completely out of the markets because you want to have the most dry powder available for the what some people say is going to be an inevitable correction coming. Other people are almost nearly all in the markets. I literally know people that have just about everything they have except for a few dollars set aside to pay monthly bills. Besides that, just about everything they had is invested in some shape or form, right? Which I think is a bit risky, especially right now. But that's what some people are doing right now, right? So we'll see how it works out. Well, let's get into some other news here because I've got some other articles here that I wanted to go over. Janet Yellen, she's out there saying she's ready to sanction Chinese banks if they aid Russia, right? So here we go with these conflicts. And so now we're going against China. Remember the whole talk about how the sanctions back a few years ago were highly inflationary. If you look at it, that's when inflation really started ticking up, was in the previous administration. Of course, it really accelerated here in the past few years, even worse. But that was something that accelerated. That was sanctions on imports. Of course, this is a different type of sanction. Also, Janet Yellen saying she won't rule out possible tariffs on China's green exports, right? So here we go with the tariffs, economic sanctions, right? Where does this lead to? It leads to much higher prices, right? So prepare for that and get ready for more inflationary forces to hit the cost of living, to hit your pocketbook. That's why, we've got to look around. We've got to know what's going on. We've got to invest accordingly on the situation that we're headed into right now. Next, so let's talk about this again. Jamie Dimon's out there with an economic warning, another economic warning. Of course, he's the CEO of one of the biggest banks in the world. So we'll listen to him, but he's given these warnings before. I think 1, 2 years ago, he started giving these tsunami warnings, economic tsunami, whatever it was, something tied to the weather and the economy. Was an economic hurricane? I don't know anymore. But what does he see? Does he really see something to warn us about? Does he see an economic downturn? Well, we're going to need the banks to pull back on this lending in order to ever see an economic downturn, because that's the driver of the economy is people borrowing money, spending money, going into debt. That creates jobs, and a lot of not good jobs, a lot of part-time jobs, of course, a lot of lower paying jobs, but it creates jobs and it keeps the economy from plunging basically. So let's get into this article though. What does he say here? In Jamie Dimon's annual letter to JP Morgan Chase shareholders, it's just been published. The widely read note offers a glimpse of his views, not just on business, but the economy. Quote, a pivotal moment for America and the free world, unquote. So he sounds pretty serious here, pretty dire, with deep divisions at home and global uncertainty. Well, we've been talking about that here for quite a while. The global uncertainties, the conflicts, the wars, the economic divide, or the economic situation now between the BRICS nations and the US, right? A lot of division right now, a lot of hostility, right? So prepare for more craziness, insanity, weirdness, whatever you want to call it. How many more ships are going to lose power? By the way, tugboats guided that other ship, unlike the one we saw in Maryland a couple weeks ago, where it actually crashed. So this one didn't crash. But prepare for more of the unexpected. But if we're talking about it, then it's not unexpected. We're going to be ready for it. You're going to be on top of it. I'm going to be on top of it. We're going to be prepared. Keep stacking as always. Eyes in the back of your head on a swivel, all that good stuff. Keep stacking, everybody. We'll hope to see you in the next video. Please give a like for what we talk about here, and we'll see you next time. Peace.